Hello, everyone. A warm welcome to everybody here in the room and also to our online audience. My name is Algis Petropaki, and I'm the General Manager of Advance. And today we're launching the 8th edition of the Gender Intelligence Report.
Also, a very warm welcome from my side. My name is Ines Hartmann. I'm co-director of the Competence Center of Diversity and Inclusion at the University of St. Gallen. This year, we have consolidated data of more than 90 companies and 370,000 employees. A unique database in Switzerland. So I hope you are all curious and you can expect many interesting insights today.
Yes, but again, this year, the data that we have available show a quite binary way of the business world. There are only few companies that have data for all genders. And also, we are aware of the fact that the laws in Switzerland, they are not there yet. And still, Ines and myself would like to encourage everybody to put in place whatever is needed in order to be able to provide you with more accurate statistics in the future. Before we dive into those statistics, I would like to say a big thank you to SIX for hosting us today. And actually, we have with us Fabienne Anne Rehulka, who is the new General Counsel of the SIX Group. So Fabienne joined SIX this June. She is responsible for legal and regulatory affairs for the group. And Fabienne, you are also member of the extended executive board. So may I ask you to join us on stage for a couple of words.
Use the micro. Okay, it works. Dear colleagues, as one of the over 140 Swiss-based members of Advanced, SIX is delighted to host this important event here at SIX. A warm welcome from my side. 24 years ago, September 2000, I walked into the offices of my first employer. It was a law firm in London, and I remember this day quite vividly. It marks the beginning of my career as a woman in financial services, and more particularly in insurance at the time. And at that time, diversity, equity, inclusion were no hot topic. Uniformity, inequity, and exclusion were not shocking either. On that first day, I was really anxious of fitting in. Now, in London, typically you will find bankers wearing a black uniforms and lawyers a blue uniform. So what I've done is I went to buy a blue uniform for myself with skirts, obviously, and heels. And now, today, looking at this room, with the variety of outfits and colors, I think we've made we've progressed very well since 2000. There is more to do on this journey, obviously. At SIX, diversity is a strategic priority and part of our goals. We focus on 3 pillars: supporting gender inclusion, generation engagement, and cultural diversity. Similar to other industries which have been really heavily male-dominated for many years, we need to be intentional if we want to make a difference. After 3 months in the company, I'm really encouraged by what I have seen and experienced here. We are 3 women on the executive committee, and I dare to say 3 very vocal women. We measure our diversity ratio and express sincere disappointment when we are not meeting our ambitious targets. During my first week, I found myself together with Marion Leslie, who is a member of the executive committee, and our head of BFI, at a leader and daughter event in Zurich, where we were gathering to encourage the next generation of ladies to continue their career while also combining this with a family. This was not coordinated, it was purely by chance, but that gave me a hint of the commitments of the ladies at SIX in pursuing this important priority. My peers, male peers, are all equally supportive. I have been approached by colleagues asking me to open my network to them in the hope of finding talents amongst the women community. On the generation priority, I can share with you as well that my predecessor, who's been with the company for 30 years and is still on my side, helping me onboarding into my new role. And I'm very pleased to see that we're also taking care of generations, young generation, and those who are close to retirement. So these things seem to be minor actions. Show me who you have on your LinkedIn, or providing a transition for people who retired. But in my experience, these are really these simple actions that make a huge difference. So now we are all excited to be amongst the first to hear the insights from the Gender Intelligence Report, the recommendation and best practices on how we can advance gender diversity, especially via inclusion. I'm looking forward to hearing about the simple, tangible, and impactful actions that we can all take, leveraging our position, our network, and sincere commitment. Thank you, Advance, and the Competence Center for Diversity and Inclusion at the St. Gallen University for this important work you are doing, and for everyone who took the time to join today in person and online. I wish you a delightful exchange.
So thank you, Fabienne, for those words. Yeah. Let's move to power balance. This is the topic of this year's report. And as always, we are going to start by showing you the latest numbers of where we stand today with gender equality in Switzerland, and then dive into the power topic, look at the power dynamics, and see what is it that we can do in order to change those dynamics. And in the second part of the presentation, we have invited some of our member companies to inspire us with the great things that they are doing. Okay, how many of you have actually been in a gender intelligence report presentation before? Oh, quite a few hands up. So probably you remember the slide with which we are always starting the presentation. So this famous slide, which shows the gender representation per management level, right? This one slide that never changes. Exactly, this one. But this year, I've been looking forward to see the consolidated numbers because in the last couple of months, there have been in press, in newspapers, quite some articles talking about companies that they are reducing their D&I efforts, reducing their D&I teams. So I was thinking probably they know something that I don't know. Maybe we're making a step change in numbers this year. Yes, do you remember this movie, Same, but Different? In our case, it is same, no difference. So this first slide doesn't change. We start at non-management, where the world is more or less equal, and as we move up the hierarchy levels, the air becomes very thin for women. If we look at the change compared to last year, we have numbers between -1 and +2% points. So I think it is fair to say that not much is changing. And what I find particularly sad is if we look at middle management, right? There, the needle doesn't change neither, and this is a pity because middle management is the pipeline for the future leaders that are going to step into the shoes of the baby boomers that are going to retire in latest 10 years from now, and they are going to leave in the workforce a whole of 10% of the entire workforce. And of course, looking at those numbers, it is not difficult to say that the glass ceiling is also still there.
It is. So here you can see the glass ceiling index. The glass ceiling index analyzes if women and men have the same opportunities to reach a management position. Ideally, the gender distribution at all management levels is the same as in the overall workforce. In this ideal case, the glass ceiling index would be 1. This is what you see with the line here, with the blue line. The higher the index, the thicker the glass ceiling for women, and the more pronounced the overrepresentation of men. So we see here that overall, we have a glass ceiling index in the full sample of 2.1, so still away from the 1 ideal. We also see that advanced members have a glass ceiling index of 2 and non-members of 2.7. So advanced members do better, clearly. Another interesting result is when we look at the different industries. So again, on the left, you see in red the full sample index of 2.1. Besides that, you see 7 industries that we've analyzed. And you see that there's quite some difference between the industries. Now, let's look at the 2 industries with the lowest index, so with the smallest or thinnest glass ceiling for women. These are the tech industry and the pharma and medtech industry. They actually leverage their female pipeline potential very well and through both hires and promotions. Also, they have anchored inclusion and diversity in their corporate strategy, so recognizing their interconnectedness. They emphasize the importance of inclusive leadership, making it a cornerstone of their leadership development. Consequently, they have also implemented inclusion goals for managers, and they are measuring them by their employees' inclusion perception. And lastly, they care about discovering why employees leave their companies by systematically conducting exit interviews and analyzing them.
Good. Up to now, we have been talking about leadership positions in general. But who is in real power? Because the truth is there are leadership positions and leadership positions. Right? In some, one has more power, more influence, more prestige, more money. Now, those are the positions where one has P&L responsibility, profit and loss responsibility, where one has decision-making power, can make decisions that influence others, and the bottom line of the company. And of course, those are also the positions that are career relevant. I've never seen a CEO who has been a CEO without being before that in a revenue-generating position for the company. This is why we thought this year that we need to deep dive into those power positions. And we're using the indicator of personnel responsibility to define those power positions, because if you're leading people, then it is likely that you have influence, that you have a budget, and eventually also and P&L responsibility. So if we look at all management positions, approximately half of all management positions are those power positions, so positions with personnel responsibility. And what we strongly recommend is that you do this exact distinction in your company, because this could help us to eventually move the needle in terms of gender equality. Now, probably you can guess where I'm going to, right? How many of those management positions with power are in the hands of women. Yes, only 13%. So in other words, wherever you have power, influence, money, you basically don't find women.
So here we are looking at power positions and how they are distributed over the different management levels. Of course, we see less of these positions in top management because simply this is a smaller population. We know that not everyone can make it to the top. The big numbers, as you can see here, are in lower and middle management. So this is where the pipeline must be filled, and filled with women too, because you see that the red bars are much smaller than the blue bars. So now let's check how this pipeline is actually managed. If we look at promotions to power positions, we see that compared to their representation in the talent pool, men are strongly overrepresented in these promotions. And this is especially pronounced in the age group 31 to 50, where, as you can see here, most promotions happen. So what does this mean exactly? If there is an open power position and you are a man over 30, the chance that you get promoted into this position is at least double that of a woman the same age. The exception we see is between 21 and 30 years. In this age group, women get promoted even slightly more often to a power position than men. This is actually a silver lining on the horizon, indicating that the younger generations may move the needle in the future, provided both genders have the same career opportunities across all life phases. And by the way, the results for hiring look very similar than what we see here.
Mm-hmm. What I find interesting is to look into this first age bracket, right, 21 to 30, because there are no differences in promotions in gender. So it is important to understand what is it that is different there compared to everywhere else. And the analysis shows two things. The first one is educational level of both genders are approximately the same, which is, for instance, not the case for ages from 51 and later. And because we know that 80% of all employees that are in power positions hold a tertiary degree, it is of course important that all genders have the same educational level so that one gender doesn't have a disadvantage. So educational level, the first thing. The second thing is, and I think, Ines, we have been talking about this in every single gender intelligence report, is part-time. So in this age bracket, 21 to 30, men and women work approximately at the same employment percentages. This changes dramatically from the age of 31, where women start working in lower working percentages and men continue working full-time. And the consequences that this has in promotions, we can see on the next slide, showing the distribution of promotions per employment level. And the shocking fact that we have shown already last year is still there, unchanged. Only 5% of all promotions go to employees that work less than 80%. If you look at power positions, even more accentuated, only 3% of all promotions to power positions go to employees that work less than 80%. So basically, if you're not interested in your career, if you're not interested in getting promoted, there is one very simple thing that you can do: work less than 80%.
Okay, in the beginning we've heard that power is not only promotions and influence, but also money. So let's look at this perspective next. We have asked the Federal Statistical Office to run a special analysis for us regarding financial power. And what we have seen in this power gap that we've discussed already translates into a huge financial gap, starting at a 7% difference in gross salary at the non-management level, and this rises to 18% in middle and top management. But you may think that is not very new. We know that women earn less than men. However, what is really interesting and shocking is the bonus gap. So let's have a look at this. Looking at bonuses as a condensed expression of perceived employee value, range of power and influence, and appreciation reveals an average bonus gap of 54%. It is important to note that this bonus gap is not necessarily related to discrimination or unfairness. It is an expression of women and men being in positions, professions, or functions with different levels of perceived value, power, and influence. And they are also remunerated and awarded differently. So the big bonus difference means that men are more often in financially rewarded jobs and positions than women, which in combination with the underrepresentation of women in higher management level and power positions leads to the result we see here. Now we have seen that there is a huge power gap between women and men. But why is this in 2024 still the case?
Well, one of the explanations I definitely hear very often is it is women's fault. They are the ones that are making the wrong choices. For instance, they are the ones that are staying at home to take care for children, right? Or on the other side, from the business world, well, we want to have women, but women don't want. Right? This explanation is, of course, very handy, but we need to understand that choices are not made in a vacuum. Right? They are made inside the norms of a society. They are making inside the power dynamics of a society. So systemic change is what we need, and not to question the choices of women. And especially there are three things that we need to change. The first one is gender-typical educational and career choices. So in all those paths that lead to high power positions, you basically find very few women. Also, when women start entering a male-dominated professional field, then all of a sudden the value of this field declines, which is also a sign of how society is valuing male and female jobs. Number two, financial literacy. In Switzerland, there is a notable lack of financial literacy among women. In a study that happened in the German-speaking part of Switzerland, women performed over 50% worse than men. And they were much more likely to answer I don't know to questions. And now again here, one could say women's fault, right? Why don't they learn a little bit more about finances? But here is where the third factor comes in. And this is biases and stereotypes. Have you ever heard the sentence, worrying about money is not ladylike? Or the other side of the coin, right? A real man is one whose wife doesn't need to work. Isn't it amazing how all those old beliefs, all those stereotypes are still here with us and influencing the way we behave? And there are so many more of those stereotypes.
Yes, so let me bust another myth, that women do not aspire for power positions as soon as they are over 30 and have kids. I mean, the chart speaks for itself, but still, let me say it out loud. Women do aspire for power position, and it doesn't matter if they have kids or not. But they simply don't get the support. A representative survey in the United States found that men were over 3 times as likely as women to be well informed about career paths to P&L roles and actively encouraged to consider such roles. So, As long as the formula for power is male, the result will be male. And now we will show you some recommendations how you can change that.
Exactly. And we're going to start by the no-brainers. So, of course, we need to provide women with the same access to the same enablers of power as we do for men. One example would be to proactively offer women P&L positions and make sure that they're equally informed about the paths to get to those positions as men. A second idea, career sponsorship programs. So career sponsorship means that a senior professional is advocating for a less experienced person in the company. It's not the same as mentoring. A mentor rather gives advice, while a sponsor actively uses its network, its influence in order to create concrete career opportunities for the proteges. We know from research that 71% of those sponsors choose a protege that is similar to them. And this is why it's not a good idea to leave sponsoring to just happen in the company, to leave it to luck. We need to implement programs that give women the exact same chances to get an influential sponsor as men do. And I'm really, really happy that we're going to have Siemens in the second part of the presentation to talk to us about an initiative that they have implemented. Because systematic sponsoring programs help develop the best talent, not the mini-me's of the actual existing senior leaders. Third point, and the low-hanging fruit, financial education for your employees. There is a recent study from Swiss Life, and it shows that if women are aware of the financial consequences, long-term financial consequences that part-time work has, then they work in higher employment percentages. So something that is very easy can have high impact. So many companies have started doing this, and we are developing an asset that is going to be available to all of you to use for financial education of your employees.
Next point is foster inclusive and collaborative leadership. So first, include inclusive leadership in your promotion and hiring criteria. Define clear and transparent criteria, including expertise and leadership qualities, but also emotional intelligence, empathy, and empowering others. And give visibility to female role models who prove it is possible to actually be in a power position. Second, review and, if necessary, redesign your evaluation and reward systems. So, how are individual successes evaluated and rewarded? How team successes? Develop metrics to evaluate leadership based on team engagement, employee satisfaction, and collaborative success, rather than solely on financial performance. Third, promote a more democratic distribution of power. So consider structural changes such as reducing the number of hierarchical levels to promote a more democratic distribution of power. Empower teams and individuals at all levels to take decisions that are related to their work or tasks. And I am very happy that we have a best practice from Vontobel later in this event with a great example for sharing power at the top with 2 co-CEOs.
Third bucket, support leaders to become allies. And I know this is easier said than done. because for conscious allyship, the first thing that we need to do is to understand our privilege, right? To understand that the business world is not the same place for everyone. So we have a workshop based on virtual reality. It is designed for male leaders. They're getting a headset, and they are teleported into the body of a woman. They go through different business situations, and they realize that the world reacts differently to them because they are a woman. So can you imagine what is their first reaction when they come out of this virtual reality experience? No, this is not happening. This is far too exaggerated. And in our company, never ever. Right? And for me, success is to see after the workshop how those same leaders leave the room thinking, probably it is happening and I don't see it. So really becoming aware, right, how this business world is different for every one of us is extremely important. The second step would be to really understand the issues. And in order for this to happen, you need exchange with a marginalized group, openness, willingness to understand and to listen actively. And this could happen, for instance, if somebody actively engages in one of the ERGs of the company. And if none of the above works, then you can always define diversity targets for power positions, not for management positions in general, but specifically for power positions. And ideally, we should tie them to those targets to the reward system. Very, very happy that we have EY here today to tell us a little bit more about what you are doing to sensitize your leaders and to make them conscious allies of women.
So, before we come to the end of this first part of the presentation, we want to give you a little homework that you can actually start doing tomorrow morning. First, choose to sponsor a person who is not a mini you. So go against that norm or that automatic decision that we would take and take a conscious decision for not sponsoring a mini me. Second, define diversity targets for power positions in your organization. And third, offer financial education to your employees. So, to quickly wrap up, we started with a look at the numbers and figures that unfortunately have not changed so much, as you have seen. Then we unpacked the power gap by looking at who is in real power when it comes to decisions, influence, and finances. And third, we gave you recommendations for how to change the current power dynamics. And with that, I would conclude this part of the presentation, and we are open to questions from the audience. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Alexandra and Faye will manage the questions from the audience here in the room and also from the online chat.
Okay. There are no questions currently on the online chat, but do we have some questions in the audience? Yes, I think it's Jasmine.
And while we were waiting for the question, I'm looking at Ina and Marco there, and I remember that I haven't mentioned you, of course, coming from IKEA with also a best practice about how you are promoting your people to power positions. Sorry. Yasmin.
Thank you very much, Kisses and Ines. It was very interesting. My question would be in regards to that first slide where you see that there is no progress from year to year. If you look back a couple of years ago, how has the number shifted? More or less, I don't know if the first report or so, has it still moved a bit if you look back? So, a bit of hope or?
I'll
Why
let
not?
you do the numbers.
So we have to admit the first report, we had a very small sample with like 25 companies or so. So we can't compare it that easily, but as you've seen over the last years, it has always been like 0 to 1, maximum 2 percentage points. So very slow, and unfortunately not always on the same level. So we cannot say it's like the pipeline is filled up and, it just takes a few more years. So it is a bit of a hard progress, unfortunately.
Hi, Julia. So my question would be, we always say women should apply for certain position. The problem is that when you propose yourself for the position, then you find the usual, ceiling. So that in the end, you don't really have the profile, you don't really have the experience. So going through your studies, which is the best way to come across, let's say, this ceiling that is always there. And so in the end, another person with the right experience, which sometimes happen to be a man, is chosen.
Yes, very often it happens that the right person is a man, right? But what we said is not giving the whole weight of the responsibility on women, right? We need to change the systems, and we need to have things in place that where women get the same chances to advance. This is why we're saying proactively offer to women P&L positions instead of having them trying to come through the glass ceiling. And of course, on the other side, women have their part to do as well, and we ourselves could be a little bit more daring and trying out things, etc., etc. But this is priority number 15. The first thing that needs to happen in that we have the systems and processes in place that give women the exact same chances as men have.
Yes, and I mean, all what we said, changing or working on the biases, on the allyship, but also, trying really to give the opportunities to women early on, which can be a project management position, and then coming up, making you aware also what it needs to come to achieve such a position, how the career paths are generally going. So this is on the responsibility of leadership, and it's not mostly on the responsibility of women, right?
Here's a question. Hello. Do you see a difference in the German and the French and Italian speaking part? Because it said that in France more women work, for example. As a mother, I know there's a difference in the kindergarten kita system in the French part and the Italian part and the German part. So is there a difference?
Unfortunately, we cannot analyze by regions because we analyze the companies. And there's very few companies that are only working in one or the other region. But from the Federal Statistical Office and other studies, we know that like the French part, for example, more women are working usually at higher work percentages. So the influence from France is clearly there. Then like the more central part of Switzerland and eastern part are more traditional. Also the Italian speaking part actually, but this is not based on our data. It's more like on other data and studies that we know.
So I feel super inspired by seeing financial literacy, making it on your map, of course, naturally. My question would be, why now? You've been issuing this report for 8 years, right? And it's never really been a topic. And I've been educating people about money for a decade, and no employer up to about 3 years back would ever listen to me. So what's causing this change? Just super curious, because I think it's, of course, a super important topic.
This is a very difficult question, Olga, to answer. Every year, we're looking into the numbers of the report, and we're choosing the topics in which we want to focus every year. And with all of the movement in the market that is happening, with all the realization that financial literacy is an important part, right? We believe that it has a very a big reason why it should be in one of the most important recommendations. So, right, doors open, Olga, to do even more things together and to support even more women.
I love it.
Thank you. I had a question on your, I'm sorry, I don't remember the name, the Equal Opportunity Index or the Equality Index.
The glass ceiling index.
Glass ceiling index. And you mentioned that when women enter a field, you know, the value of that sector maybe decreases. However, if we look at your glass ceiling index, the lowest, you know, the best ceiling is among tech companies or pharma, and I don't think they are, you know, diluting in their value. Is it because is there a reason why there you have a much better, or is it less traditional or conservative? I mean, why is there the reason? Tech is more of a newer field, for example, than insurance, I presume.
So what we can say when we say the value goes down, then it means the wage, the salary level that goes down when in a field a lot of women enter. And here the glass ceiling index actually looks at, you know, the gender distribution over the management levels compared to the overall company gender distribution. So this looks at mostly how do women move up the ladder. And in tech field, we see, of course, that there's very few women. So the percentage of women is very small, but they manage to kind of keep them up to the top levels too. So there's not this pyramid where you start with 50-50 in non-management and end up with 20-80 in top management, but you start maybe with 29 or something and end up with 20. So it decreases a lot less. We think it's because the companies in that field are very concerned because they have so few women, they want to make sure they also can develop. But we don't know the reason. That's just our hypothesis.
Mm-hmm. Conscious about time, so
yes.
Maybe one or max two.
I have
questions.
one from the online chat.
Okay.
And that is regarding the issue of like the system around us and the topic of childcare. And the question from Nimet is, how can we bring the government authorities to push the sectors on that, on improving that? I know there's a recommendation, but not an obligation. And in her opinion, that's why there's no progress. So what is Advance doing around supporting the government and the initiatives to make change happen?
Thank you for this question, Faye. So the topic political involvement of Advance is one that we are discussing regularly with the board. And every time we decide the same. We think that politics are too slow for us. We want to have impact, and therefore we decide to focus on the cooperation with our companies, because truth is that the majority of our companies have already a lot of better policies than what the laws of Switzerland say. What we have decided consciously to do is to put all our knowledge together. So all insights that we have, all facts and figures, and write regularly white papers with those facts and figures, which we distribute to media and also to politicians, especially if we know that in Parliament, for instance, at the moment, it is discussed, right, individual taxation is a topic. So we've written a white paper on individual taxation, and in advance of the discussion, we send it to all politicians so that they have the base of facts and figures to decide to make the right decisions. This is what Advance is doing. Yes, let's. take the last one.
Hi, Alkistis and Ines.
Hi, Bettina.
Thank you very much for the presentation and the rather frustrating numbers after having been together 15 years in this diversity and inclusion. So what really surprises me is the gender pay gap, because we have a law and we don't have that law since last year. We have this law since quite a while. So what can we do? What are the solutions we can take apart from equal salary certifications whatsoever? Because if I see 18% and then when it comes to the bonus level, I mean, we don't need to talk about that, but if I see 18% at the end of the line in management positions, I think we have to do something.
We need to have more women in the good paid jobs. So work on promoting and actually filling that first power gap. So this will also solve, hopefully, a lot of the pay gap, because as you also know, there's a lot of equal salary certifications. Companies don't have systematic discrimination usually. So we need to work on the other part, which means getting women in the well-paid positions as well as men.
We don't hear you, the microphone doesn't work.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, so I'm Malvika, I'm part of the advanced team. And indeed, this data is incredibly depressing. And I love the best practice ideas and Wednesday initiatives to have leaders take the responsibility. However, if we leave it to the leaders alone to take responsibility, we will be here in 10 years with still same, not different. So each one of us needs to be an activist. Each one of us needs to be an activist and not only wait for the leaders, because that will take too long, but we need to think, what can we be doing? Julia, to your question, when you're told that you are not ready for a promotion, I would be asking, why not? How will you know I'm ready? What will it take? 5 years? Well, what if I do it in 2 years? So don't just accept the answers that they're giving. Start grassroots efforts. At Syngenta, we've seen an amazing best-in-class sponsorship program. With the executive board that's been involved, it came from a grassroots effort. So don't underestimate the power you have, because we all need to be activists in this for this to change and be different. I hope 5 years from now, not 10.
Okay, thank you, Malvika. These empowering words. I think it is time to move to the second part of the presentation.